Right, I think we're live. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Startup Operator Roundup, where we bring you news and views of the week that was. Unfortunately, Gunjan has had to run, and subbing in his place, we have the very talented host, Jivraj Sachar of the Indian Silicon Valley podcast. Hi, Jivraj. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Roshan. I think I'm super delighted to be here and fulfill my admiration of having to finally host you. I would say so. I think Gunjan's loss is my gain. So great to be here and speak to you about the week that it's been and have a fun chat today.
Yeah, wonderful to have you on the podcast, Jivraj. So, how has your week been so far?
Awesome. I think it's been busy and had a rough night. Editing is not as fun as one may imagine, but no complaints as such. Been a lot of fun. Enjoying the work and podcast. How about you? What's it been like?
It's been an interesting week for sure, right? And more than a couple of things that I wanted to talk about actually. There was this Your Story article on engineer salaries. I'm not sure if you caught that,
Yeah.
right? I think there's been a lot of brouhaha about that, right? But I think what I feel is that salaries have been stagnant for a while now, right? I mean, opening salaries, entry level salaries have been in the 3 to 5 lakh range for almost 10 to 15 years now. And so what you're seeing is a long due reckoning that we're having, right? And I think post remote, global companies can hire Indian talent, which is world class anyway, right? So it's unfortunate that in the interim period, I mean, Indian startups are having to compete harder basically with
Yeah.
their global counterparts. And on this, while there is again a lot of chat about people giving BMW bikes and iPads and all of that stuff, I think money is a necessary condition, not a sufficient one in this case, right? I think
Yeah.
communicating your mission and enabling people to solve bigger, bolder challenges is a key part of the decision making, and that's something that founders should not shy away from communicating, right?
Yeah.
Really, and translate that passion to the world. Articulate your passion, right? And you will have these people join. So while there's a lot of chat about this, I really feel it's like short-term pain, but it's a net positive, definitely a huge net positive for the ecosystem. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. And I think just the fact that this year's shown us that capital is available in abundance, but to find the right talent and then,
Yeah.
compensate either materially or in whatever manner becomes a component of it, right? About talent acquisition. But that remains to be a challenge that a lot of companies are competing for. And it's interesting how this plays out. And I must laud that a lot of interesting articles, coming up
Hmm.
in different sorts of like, I think there
Yeah.
was this delivery article as well, right, on the delivery folks and who and their compensation, which was very interesting, which blew up in the ecosystem. And similarly, this one as well. So yeah, interesting reporting
Yeah.
happening all around with the great activity that is there.
Right. So I'd like to talk about one other thing that happened, I think, which is, I think, a key movement, right? I mean, I think you can call it the second UPI movement for India, right? Which is the whole account aggregators framework. So essentially, what this framework will do is it'll allow customers to basically enable third parties to share their data with banks and lending institutions and other financial entities, right? Let's put it that way, right? So far, I think 4 account aggregators, 8 banks, and the GST network have already joined the ecosystem, right? Uh, you can think of it this way, right? So essentially, what this does is it solves for two things, right? One is credit and services, and the other is compliance. Now, if you've had to take out a loan, or if you've had to buy a policy, or apply for any other financial service, like, you understand the amount of documents that you have to furnish and so on and so forth, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this completely digitizes the entire thing, right? So think of it as a single sign-on for a variety of financial services, right? So as an account aggregator, the aggregator will be able to share your details with a bunch of other financial entities, right? So that is one thing. And second, um, again, financial services itself in India, right? I mean, it's very skewed, right? So if you look at credit, for example, there's a huge credit crunch, right? Access to credit is not simple, and your options are also fairly limited, right? Even though we have NBFCs and we have fintechs and all of those. So what this will do is this will enable lending institutions to compete for your business, right? Which means that they can offer you deals which are a lot more competitive, right? And you can go beyond the 2 or 3 or 4 banks that you would otherwise consider, right? So this is pretty amazing, actually, really, really amazing, and great work on all of the regulatory bodies, right? I mean, whether it's the RBI or the SEBI or the IRDAI or even the pension fund regulatory authority, right? All of them have come together to sort of create this framework. So this is again, as I say, it's probably the second UPI movement for India, and it will unlock a lot of value in terms of financial services for the country. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I think I echo that sentiment for sure, and a huge net positive for the ecosystem. I think going forward, I want to, just lay the groundwork for what we're going to cover. So I think, we want to cover some of the major funding news and major acquisition that has happened of BillDesk, and we want to go to, the Zerodha news of wanting to start now. They'll start a mutual fund. We'll have Bikayi, which talks about, e-com enabling SMEs to come online and sell online, and then Skit as well. So moving on to, I think, the first aspect of what we want to discuss, it's the big one, right? Like one of the largest perhaps acquisitions in the ecosystem that we've seen, which will consolidate two major institutions coming together and forming a large fintech giant from the country, maybe a top 10 global player as well now. So just an overview of that, right? BillDesk was founded in 2000 by ex-Arthur Andersen executives, M.N. Srinivasu, Ajay Kaushal, and Karthik Ganpati. It's a one-stop shop for all online bill payments. It got acquired by Prosus-owned PayU. Prosus has around a bunch of these portfolio companies. It's invested in Swiggy, Urban Company, and others in the country as well. And this is its most expensive, of course, investment, 4.7 billion deal. PayU India and BillDesk run complementary businesses, as we understand, and combined, they'll be now doing 4 billion transactions annually. I think over to you, Roshan, for your comments on, how you think this is going to play out for the ecosystem. What do you think is the rationale behind the acquisition, and what do you think about the price? I'm sure that's up for debate for sure.
I think I was on mute.
Yeah.
So, I mean, see, this is a culmination of a 20-year-old story, right? I mean, founded in March of 2000, during the height of the dot-com bubble. This was fintech before fintech, right? I mean, at this point of time, just to give you some perspective, there were less than 50,000 internet users in India, right? I think we had just moved from dial-up modems to DSL, and 2000 was also this whole Y2K craze, right? I mean, which if I explain it today, I mean, people might laugh, but essentially, I mean, computer programming had budgeted just the 2 digits for the year. So you would say 94 instead of 1994. And 2000 was going to be a reset, and people were, kind of like panicking that this will shut down systems worldwide and stuff, right? So that is the era that we're talking about, right? Forget about your Amazon or Flipkart or whoever else, like the e-commerce and payments that we take for granted. I mean, today, I mean, we pay multiple times a day and we don't even realize. So this was at a time when payment infrastructure was at its very, very, very nascent stage, right? I mean, today we have 700 million plus internet users. Over 50% of the country accesses the internet, and a portion of them pay for products and services as well, right? So in terms of the growth itself of the company, right? I mean, for 20 plus years, BillDesk has done this whole, aggregating merchants and also partnering with banks really well, right? They have 200 million plus in revenue, 37 million in profits, right? They are the largest player, both in the bill payment and the payment aggregation space. And I think with PayU, what they see is perhaps consolidation on the last mile, right? I mean, PayU, of course, has a very good reach on SMEs in India, right? And so they will sort of consolidate on that front. I mean, I was reading an interview of the founder, and again, highly recommend Money Control's article on BillDesk, right? They have some fantastic reporting, right? So shout out to them. And he likened the whole payments thing to what's happening in telecom, or rather what has happened in telecom, right? Where he said that, look, I mean, you are not acquiring a user, right? You're facilitating a payment, right? And if you discount this and if you run into loss on a per transaction basis, this is a race to the graveyard, right? To quote him, he called it a race to the graveyard, and that's actually true. Right? If you look at what's happened in telecom, for example, right, from 12 or 13 entities, we're down to around three right now, three or four, right? So, and I mean, we often say that payments is sort of the tip of the spear, and there'll be value added services, and surely the newer fintechs have realized that, right? I mean, have long since realized that. If you look at Razorpay, for example, or any of those guys, they're all in the value added services space, right? I mean, all of them will have a loan book pretty soon if they haven't already, right? I mean, they will offer plenty more things like SaaS and so on for merchants and so on, right? So, but this was like a slightly different take from the founder of BillDesk, right? And interesting thing is, I think BillDesk had applied for a new license, right? Which means that they will, again, they'll be able to offer some financial services and so on. So I kind of look at it as the 2.0 of BillDesk right now. And it's a fantastic article. I would definitely recommend people check it out, right? Even after 21 years of of running this, I mean, he still has that same passion, right? I mean, they still have that passion for change, and which is wonderful to see, right? So, quick trivia, Jivraj. So, Arthur Andersen is the name of perhaps the world's largest consulting firm today, right? Can you name that? Do you know who that is, or do you know what that is?
No, I don't actually.
See, this is where I betray my age, right? I mean, Arthur Andersen it was basically Accenture, right? Or rather, Accenture was Arthur Andersen up until 2000 or so, when they changed their name to Accenture, right? So yeah, so there's that.
Good one. I think that's going to go on my Twitter because that's definitely out there. But no, I think that perfectly sums up, where the synergies lie. I think a net positive insanely for the ecosystem, long time coming. And the synergies combined would be phenomenal, makes it a global player, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I was looking at, an interview, like I would recommend that as well. I think Anirban of PayU was talking about, the acquisition, and he perfectly summed up what the mind frame was and how they were looking at the deal. And when commenting on the price, I think he put it in a way that was, it's a short-term price for a long-term consolidation that can really magnify the impact of what it is that they do combined. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when I say 2.0, right, I mean, at this point of time, all the payment guys will start becoming a lot more financial services and banks, like banks, right? And Prosus has deep pockets, obviously, right? I mean, they own Stack Overflow. They paid around 1.8 billion, which on hindsight seems like a steal at this point, right? Given what has happened for valuations last year, right? And they're also a large shareholder in Tencent, right? So definitely Prosus has deep pockets, and perhaps an IPO or something is on the cards, in the future, for sure.
Yeah. No, further, I think moving on to the next sort of news, I think Bikayi is on the cards. So Bikayi is this platform that enables e-commerce digitization for SME players. Sequoia led the round for $10.8 million Series A funding. It basically integrates WhatsApp and enables SMEs to help consumers buy via WhatsApp. It was founded in 2019 by IITN Sonakshi Nathani and Ashutosh Singla. Shout out to the founders. In my opinion, this deal, I think the way we look at, let's say, e-commerce, and I think there's still such a long way to go, right? I think there's less than 150 million online shoppers currently in the country, around 80 million SMEs in the country. And we're looking at a penetration rate of 5% overall shopping rates, right? So when we look at those numbers, I think all in all, that just gives us the overview of what the kind of potential lies, because when we look at the future, we see a lot of consumers coming from the tier 2, 3 cities, buying from these SMEs via means like WhatsApp. And so this digitization becomes extremely important, is on the cards. We see a lot of other players do this as well, right? I think InstaMojo released the Shopify like product very recently itself, and they acquired Get Me a Shop sometime last year, if I'm not wrong. I think other players like My Dukaan and others have also consolidated in this space. I think net positive for the ecosystem. But I think Bikayi is poised at a very good juncture at a time when I think e-commerce is going to blow up with more internet penetration and all the things that have now led to this infrastructure being set up and waiting for the second wave of users from India to just jump on and come on the internet. So
that's a very important point that you bring up, right? Which is that, look, I mean, the next wave and the wave after that of users that will come up, right? I mean, these folks will not shop or consume products and services or buy like how we have bought, right? I mean, in tier 1 cities and so on, right? It will not be an Amazon or a Flipkart kind of an experience, or rather, I mean, it will be a slightly different experience for them. And it's amazing that, folks like Bikayi and a bunch of others are sort of enabling that, right? We spoke about this whole phenomenon of social commerce when we spoke about deal share a few roundups back, right? So a lot of WhatsApp-led commerce. For instance, I mean, if you see what's happening in China with WeChat, of course, I mean, things have imploded since for the last 3 or 4 weeks. But WeChat is a classic example, right? That is still an innovation that's pending in India, and definitely will take root with these kind of companies, getting funded and
Yeah. No, for sure. I think interesting days ahead, and they just enable so much of access and things that we've taken for granted for the folks that are now coming online. And it's very essential. It'll happen in some shape or form. And it's great to see multiple companies coming up in this space, and especially now Bikayi, leading the way for a lot of acceleration in the ecosystem. So super news for sure. I think further, this is also a big one. I think Zerodha has always been this innovative company in the ecosystem, which has, done category creating things. Now that they've, gotten a nod for starting off, a mutual fund business for them. They've already been distributing mutual funds, but now they want to get onto the manufacturing side of things and, want to start a mutual fund of their own. And that's very interesting to see, especially with the SEBI guidelines for the license being, not lifting restrictions to a certain extent, because earlier you had to be profitable and things like that. So why don't you get us started, Roshan, on this, and maybe I can add my comments later in.
Yeah. Jivraj, one more piece of trivia for you. Do you know the company that Nikhil and Nitin started before Zerodha?
No, I don't.
Well, I mean, the clue is in the name itself, right? So it was an advisory firm called Kamath and Associates. In 2004, they started this, right? And it became a franchisee of Reliance Money, right? So in some sense, it's sort of it's like they're getting back to where they started from, so they ran an advisory firm, and right now they're getting back to, being wealth advisors themselves, right? Or being in the wealth space themselves with this whole mutual fund license. So Zerodha, I mean, we've spoken plenty of times, right? I mean, they've sort of introduced so many people to the equity markets, right? They made that whole experience so seamless for people. And they have the coin platform anyway, where you can buy commission-free mutual funds. They offer a wide variety as well, 100 plus mutual funds at the click of a button, right? And if you look at penetration itself, right, market penetration, we still have probably about 1.5 crore investors who are putting money in funds or equities and directly investing in the markets, basically, right? I mean, so which is again like 1 to 2% less than that maybe of the population, right? So there's a huge scope for growth.
Absolutely.
And so which is where, I mean, I think Zerodha is it totally makes sense, right? I mean, it offers a very nice revenue line for them. They're calling it a passive fund, so this won't have your typical management fees and stuff, but they will have some sort of commissions. They'll probably charge about 0.5% or whatever, which for a very large base, right, I mean, that they have will be very significant. So I look at it as, I mean, they already have distribution, right, in terms of number of users and so on. So this is just another product that they can sort of, cross sell to that captive audience that they already have, right? And yeah, huge fan of Zerodha's product. I use it myself, right? So more power to them.
Absolutely. I think that's bang on point, because I think overall, as you mentioned, penetration is still up for grabs. Mutual fund provides, that aspect as well, because it's easy to use. People understand it better, and they can come online, start investing. The number of demat accounts in the country are still at a very low point, and nothing in comparison to what, other developed economies might have. So I think there's definitely there a lot of scope. And as you mentioned, since they already have distribution, it makes sense to go into the manufacturing aspect. And we've seen, I think, Grow acquired this company called India Bulls, right? And a lot of other similar activities also happening. So we'll see more and more players start this, especially with restrictions being lifted to an extent. But super news for sure.
Just a quick point to add on that, right? I mean, in the next year, couple of years, you will see a lot of these fintechs. I mean, it's already happening. It's been happening, right? Bharat Pay, for example, acquiring PMC and so on, right? So you will see a lot of fintechs acquire banks and these what do you say? People who have those licenses and so on, right? I mean, people who have passed regulation, you will see a lot of fintechs acquiring them to offer financial services. So this is again, one of those things.
For sure, I think that makes, because the next stage of fintech and redefining how banks were originally used and how we want to use it as consumers, I think it becomes essential, and we've seen that activity already happening with the likes of Bharat, as you iterated. So bang on point, I think. Further, I think, let's go on to the next part of things. And we've covered a large part of fintech now, I think, with the account aggregator, Zerodha, and we've covered e-commerce as well. But coming to this voice recognition, customer support, and bringing AI into the picture, right? With Skit, which is the rebranded version of what might people recognize as, I think, vernacular AI. They recently announced their funding news of 23 million for its Series B. Right, this was led by Waterbridge Capital. So, what do you have to say about that, Roshan? I think would love to hear your views there.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting. You should go on the Skit website and try out a bunch of those voices, right? And it's pretty real, man. I mean, it's not like the highly robotic sort of calls that I get, right? I mean, hello, do you want a loan? Right? No, thank you. Right? So it's not like that, and this is pretty interesting for sure, right? So this whole conversational intelligence is something that has been gaining ground for a while now, and I think we have the sort of technology to make this happen also, right? So yeah, I mean, services, usually it's seen as a bottom line business, right? It's about how much can you shave off and how much can you save, basically, right? Cost savings and stuff. But it can also be a huge point of delight, right? I mean, all of us have had service events with our you name it, right? I mean, whether it's banks or whether it's like travel or whatever it is, right? So travel in the good old days, but so we've all had service events, and it's something that all of us can't wait to get over, right? But it can actually be a point of delight, and it can also be a very like it can be key for upsell, cross sell, and those kind of activities as well, right? So so any intelligence on that front makes it very, very it could be extremely profitable for businesses to adopt some things like this, right? So yeah, I mean, interesting for sure.
Yeah, no, I really like that, the way you mentioned about the consumer spectrum moving, right? And how we expect customer support as a mechanism to end or get through. I think that lens is definitely changing. And with voice recognition, I think vernacular AI has done a great part in consolidating in the Indian market as they now scale to US and Southeast Asian geographies. I think this capital influx really helps with that, and building a product of this stature, which can really build on, customer support and add on to so much of what the larger players do, can be a game changer. So it's very interesting to see where they go. We've seen international players really do this well. And on a consumer front, we've seen the likes of, consumer behaviors moving in that direction anyway, with Alexa and Echo and whatnot, right? We've already seen that on some level, how that how does that get integrated with e-commerce and a lot of other aspects will be interesting. And I think vernacular AI lies at the center of that behavior. So
Yeah.
super to see where that goes.
Yeah. And, just to add, right, see, this is one of those businesses that, if you build out of India, then you can perhaps sell anywhere, right? Because think about it. I mean, multilingual support in India is probably 20 languages or 15 languages, right? Compare that with the US. I mean, you'll probably have to support 3 at best, 2 or 3, right? English
Yeah,
and Spanish at
exactly.
best, right?
Yeah.
And then think of accents, context, all of those things, and think of the scale as well in India, right? I
Yeah.
mean, see, each of the businesses that we're talking about, even Bikayi, for example, right? They're able to serve these niches because every niche in India is at least 100 million people,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's what happens when you have a huge domestic market, and very interesting stuff.
Yeah, no, for sure. On that take, I remember somebody mentioning this, and a lot of people have said this in silos, but if you can make it in India, right, in a geography where every other state is almost a different market with its own characteristics and its own cultural demographics and all of that, I think you can make it anywhere else if you keep at it. And interestingly, I was researching about, vernacular AI, and it seems like they have around 160 odd linguistics, matched on their AI platform and all of that. So it's interesting, very, very insane what they are doing for sure. Awesome. I think we're up for the next one, apps for Bharat. I think there's been a lot of chatter regarding this particular company, and it's interesting to see what they are doing. Second time founder, very interesting team. The founder had built Trell earlier. So just for everyone, somebody who might not be aware, Apps for Bharat, a product-based studio. So it's a consortium of products. They've launched one as of now, but in the spiritual and devotional space or consumer aspects of Indian users. So the second layer, as we call it, Bharat users, it raised 10 million in a Series A round. It was led by some marquee investors, including Elevation Capital, which led the round, and existing investors, Sequoia, Bnext, and Matrix also participated. So that's a great validation. Funding rounds are always great validation. But I think, in my opinion, they've identified a great niche, right? I think the way they define it as well, and it's very clearly laid out, is that spiritual and devotional needs of consumers have particularly been left out because we've not seen many of the audience that we're talking about actually be on the internet either. But when they are, there are no specific products built for that. And to take the approach of building a consortium where they can come up with multiple iterations and multiple use cases and identify that with different products which can serve different needs of consumers will be very interesting to see. They've only released one product as of now, so we still have a lot to see as to where it goes. Their first product is actually called Sri Mandir, aims to be the virtual destination for devotees to create their personalized shrines, consume devotional content, connect with prayer groups, and access a large library of spiritual texts, scriptures, and videos. Given that we've seen a spiritual side, and we've seen a large portion of the country spiritually led, I think they're sitting on a large market which has great potential. So it would be interesting to track where they head, what are the kind of products they further launch, and how is the market taking them as well, and what are some complementary activities happening in a similar space, because I'm sure the trend is going to take up, and a lot of companies are going to come in this spectrum for sure. What do you think, Roshan?
For sure. No, for sure. I mean, so spirituality, astrology, related things, right? I mean, these are things that are very, very popular, right? I mean, like if you look at internet content itself, right? I mean, and you get to know this when you're doing keyword searches for PPC and stuff like that, right? You realize how competitive it is. That's a significant content that's being consumed, right? And the whole WhatsApp phenomena, the whole geo phenomena has just increased the base so much that people are right now, I mean, consuming all of this on their mobile, right? So yeah. There's definitely a market out there for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Currently, as you mentioned, I think most of it is ad hoc. The way they're trying to streamline it and build for that specific need itself, and having identified that problem that not many people, many folks, many players are solving for it, I think that's a niche that can serve really well in the long run. So looking forward to what they further go ahead and talk about. But yeah, I think this was interesting. We've covered most of the news aspects that we had to. I think there was also this Pulse by PhonePe this week, right, which was very interesting, and a bunch of activity otherwise also happening, which is always great to talk about. As we proceed further and maybe go to concluding steps, I think we have an interesting tweet here that we'd like to converse about, and Roshan's the SaaS expert here, so I'll leave it up to him to give us a head start on this and maybe add a bit of comments later on.
No, I mean, see, this is a very interesting tweet, and because again, right, it comes back to where you're building a business from, right? So India is, I mean, obviously mobile first, right? I mean, if you look at the 700 million internet users, a large portion of them are mobile first, right? So if you're building for a, Kirana store, or if you're building for an SME, then you have to factor in mobile for sure, right? And then if you look at the extreme, like if you look at the wide base of users that we have, right? We can play on razor thin margins, right? We don't need a high ticket purchase or a high ticket, like we don't have to be extremely like, what do you call it? It doesn't have to have a very big profit margin because like elsewhere, I mean, that base is limited, right? And also this is a very do it for me market. It's not a do it yourself market, right? So which is that if people are paying you 100 rupees, they'll expect everything that you can do and then some more, right? So the breadth of things that we have to cover here is extreme, right? And you especially realize this when you're selling to the US, right? And you realize that, they're happy paying for very point solutions, right? The mindset is very different. In the US, I mean, it's like, do this one thing for me and do it extremely well. Whereas in India, it's like, can you solve my problem, right? I don't care what you do. I mean, do everything possible to solve my problem, right? So it's a very interesting contrast that this tweet brings out, right? So yeah, and definitely if you're building in India, it sort of battle hardens you for, selling to the world in some sense.
For sure. I think I agree with a large portion of what you said. And I think first up, I also want to shout out to Aryan. I think he's a very interesting 16-year-old. I can't categorize him as a kid, but by virtue of age, I will. But I think it's spectacular what he's been up to. And you should guys, everyone watching in should definitely check him out. But coming to the point, I think for me, what's interesting is, as you mentioned, I think most of it is absolutely on point. What's differing, in my opinion, is that a large part of how folks want, as you mentioned, do it for me. That translates to sales as well, right? And sales cycles as well, and how GTM strategies are marked out as well. And so that becomes a spectrum that folks have to be aware about. And on the builder perspective, you just need to be aware that there will be differing needs to your product that you have to serve towards. That I think adds a different lens. So talking to a bunch of SaaS entrepreneurs, I just realized that it's a person who wants to, or a company who wants to go, let's say global, will particularly start from a global and Indian market first, right? US, India combined, or let's say US first itself, and then maybe customize to India. So maybe those trends also come into the picture. And again, Roshan would know this for sure better, but definitely something, a very interesting take on this.
No, that's an important point. Yeah, that's an important point because a lot of SaaS companies today are global from day zero, right?
Absolutely.
They're not doing the whole India to Southeast Asia to US or elsewhere sort of a journey these days, right? And building for the US is certainly very, very different, right? I mean, if I look at products, they would be drastically different if they had that US first mindset, and you're seeing that a lot of founders are doing that right now because it's just a lot more convenient to start with that mindset than to say that, okay, you know what, I'm going to extend my product, which is built for Asia, to the US, right? So, but I guess, I mean, this was not the thinking 8 years back, right? 7-8 years back. So yeah, I mean, everything is a learning experience. So, dude, I cannot believe that this guy is 16 years old, man. I just cannot. I mean, this is like an amazing tweet, right? So fantastic. For sure. Fantastic.
Absolutely. No, absolutely agree. Yes, I think moving further, we're almost, on the clock for what has been a spectacular conversation. I think I would like to mention that this has been absolutely fun. Talking to Roshan always is, particularly this one more so because we were discussing a bunch of different subjects, which summarize so much of what's happening in the ecosystem in the last week that it's been. But beyond that as well, I think very interesting times for whoever's building, whoever's a part of, or even for folks like us. I can speak for myself, who's like, let's say, interviewing these amazing builders on a week-on-week basis, because it just brings out so much and sets up as a country for so much of the future and just bright days ahead of us. So very refreshing and great to have spoken about this all in all.
Yeah, healthy dose of optimism for sure, right? So yeah, I mean, we have a bunch of upcoming episodes, both on the Startup Operator and the Indian Silicon Valley podcasts. I spoke to Nitin some time back about. So Nitin, incidentally, is the founder, was the CEO of PayU earlier, and he also built Ola Financial Services, right? So again, he is a veteran of the fintech scene, right? So he's been building in the space since 2010, 2011. And he's seen the whole evolution, right? Uni is a very, very interesting proposition. They've just come out with their Pay 1/3 card, and right. I got to discuss a lot more than just uni, right? I mean, I got to discuss how fintech itself is evolving. So it's a pretty interesting episode. And Jen is someone who works with a lot of Indian founders on perhaps what is perhaps the most important challenge that they're facing, which is sales, right? And she's helping them with what she calls founder-led sales, and doing the whole 0 to 1 journey and expanding to the US and so on. Works with a bunch of SaaS founders, and so it was an amazing learning experience for me, right? Think of it as a B2B sales masterclass, right? So 2 very good episodes coming up. Jivraj, what do you have coming up?
I also have 2 very interesting episodes on the radar. I think one of them is going to launch later during the day today, which is with Nirmit Parikh, who's building Apna. Nirmit has a very interesting background. He's built 2-3 companies before this, which was acquired by Intel, and then he went to grad school, which I think, there's so much debate about it, but turns out he was, he had these amazing experiences at Stanford, learned a ton, worked at Apple, and then started Apna, which he first went undercover for to gain actual insights of what the rising working class of the country looks like. And now he's building a business which has insane network effects and, redefining how we look at professional networking, right? Because traditionally we've always felt and built solutions for folks like us who are more privileged, thankfully so, and I'm talking about a general, with all due respect to everyone, but I think a large part of the working class has been left out and has not had the tools originally to, let's say, rise beyond. And I think the way they've taken an outlook to, let's say, household things and workers in a bunch of aspects has been tremendous. So I'm very excited to launch that. It's an entire masterclass on building a network effects, a business, building a network, and understanding so much of community building, so many moats development, and a lot of that, right? So I think Nirbit, one of the most prolific founders I've spoken to for sure. And the second episode as well, make something people want, is the YC tagline by, I think, Razorpay, which I think is the most successful YC company from India, in my opinion. It was a treat to speak with Shashank. I think it's a category-defining company. It's releasing products at an insane rate now. It's become a market leader in the payment gateway, sort of accepting payment sort of a solution, and now it's categorizing itself into other markets, going in deep as well, expanding geographies. So a very, very interesting conversation with him. He's been a hacker at heart, and how they started almost right out of college, building a payments product at a time where, again, payments was perhaps not as sexy, and especially not from folks who were right out of college. It's a very interesting one for anyone who's followed Razorpay for sure. So do be in the lookout for it.
Awesome. Very nice episodes coming up.
Thank you, Roshan. Yeah, so I think we're on the clock. This has been, again, wonderful. Thank you, Roshan, for the opportunity. It's been a delight to observe the Startup Operator journey, to see these roundups, to hear the episodes, to have you as a mentor, friend, and whatnot. I could go on and on, but the Roshan appreciation can be reserved for a separate episode or whatnot. But this was an absolute delight, and I hope it was for you as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Delighted to host you, Jivraj. Although you did much of the hosting today, right? Thanks so much for being on the roundup, and thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Again, follow us on all the socials. Follow both Jivraj and myself to keep updated on all of the new content that we bring you every week. And yeah, hopefully the week ahead is as amazing as the week that was. So fantastic, or even better, perhaps.
Yes. Cheers, everyone. And yeah, happy Teachers' Day. I think we missed that
Oh
on
yeah,
the
happy
record.
Teachers Day. Happy Teachers Day to
Yes.
all of my bosses.
Yeah, yeah. Super. Great. This was great.
All right. Thanks.